Hey guys, so figured I'd put out a brief video as far as my transfer case setup because it's not necessarily a trick, but it's not something I've seen too often, so I figured I'd kind of show you some stuff with it. So it is actually an NV241OR, so that comes out of a 07, I believe basically until the end of the body style, JK and JKU Rubicon. So the difference between the Rubicon and the normal JK transfer case is that this has a 4-to-1 low range. The case is pretty big. As far as I can tell, I think the case is the same from the Rubicons to non-Rubicons, but obviously the internals are different. But as far as an upgrade from the factory Cherokee MP231 to the MV241OR, it's definitely a much stronger case. Obviously the main advantage, the main reason I even did this, is to get the 4-to-1 low range, to help me in a lower range. Because the Jeep's pretty heavy. Hindsight's 20/20. I should have done 488s and not the 456s that are in it. But it's getting 1 tons down the road anyway, so it's going to get 548s, or whatever the deepest gear I can put in those axles is. There's the Rubicon case. And this, I got rid of the factory yokes. These are 1310 yokes. And then this is a tone ring and a sensor from a super short slip yoke eliminator kit from Terraflex, because the factory JK Rubicon case does not have provisions for speedometer output. So I was able to have my buddy's dad, who's a machinist, mill down this yoke just a little bit and mill out this tone ring so I could get that on there. And then I just made a bracket for the sensor, and then the sensor is direct plug and play. And yeah, it's only off by about 5 miles an hour, so may end up trying to fix that somehow. So really the only thing as far as issues, as far as mounting this to the Cherokee, is I had to trim this bent flange off for the mount for the exhaust, and then I had to notch that polyurethane rubber mount just for this bolt hole. But besides that, spline count's the same. This is a 2000 AW4, so I believe that's 27 spline, don't quote me on that. But yeah, aside from that, it's slid right on the back of the transfer case. As far as fitting in the tunnel, now again, I don't know as far as if running with a stock crossmember. I don't know if this crossmember is dropped down at all. But the only thing that was really kind of close was this nub was about that much longer, so it almost hit the floor, so I just trimmed that off because I don't need it anyway. But besides that, it fits. I didn't have to touch the floor at all. Brand new drive shafts, had to get them made. But yeah, the other thing that's nice about using this Rubicon case is it's factory set up for a slip drive shaft, so there's no slip yoke, so that you don't even need to do a slip yoke eliminator. So as far as the shifter goes, I was able to take the factory shifter. I cut all the original gating out of it because none of that was going to work with the other transfer case anyway. And then this is a piece of exhaust hanger, and then just some round bar. I'll have it something to rest against. The thing about having this shifter set up like this without a cable setup is the throw and everything is actually inverted or backwards of what it would normally be with a factory case. So this is actually in 2-wheel drive right now. Normally having it all the way back would be 4-low, because the way the Rubicon case shifts is backwards than what the 231s would be. So I have it marked here obviously, but this is 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, neutral, and 4-low. And like I said, if you wanted to get it to work with a factory like center console and the bezel and everything, I'm sure you probably could. You could probably get a cable set up from like Novak adapters or something and run it the way the because even the factory JKs use a cable setup. So if you did that, I'm sure you could probably get it to work factory, but being that this thing is slowly evolving into a trail beater, it really didn't bother me to cut all this up. So here you can kind of see I cut the factory linkage off, and then this is actually the original shifter off the JK case. And I was able to cut the end of it off and use it, so now it's about, oh, I don't know, maybe an inch longer. This is the BoostWorks shift linkage. And that is actually the same shift linkage that was from the BoostWorks kit for the MP231. And same thing, I was able to extend that about an inch and tweak it over a little bit, and I was able to get that to work. So I just wanted to go over relatively briefly, hopefully you can hear me over the rain, is some of the downsides of this transfer case. Now, the big one is kind of a two-parter: cost and availability. Yes, there are JKs and JKU Rubicons, and there's a decent amount of them, but how many of them are, say, wrecked or in junkyards? Or as far as used availability of this transfer case, there's not a lot out there. Now, you can find them, but because there's not a ton, and it's a relatively desirable case as far as not availability, but production number, and yes, it's got 4-to-1, they tend to be pricey. Now, the case in my Jeep, it was a 60,000 mile used case that I paid $800 for. Now, some people will say, and they're not wrong, that $800 is way too much to pay for a chain drive case. Which, like I said, they're not wrong. This, for me, was more of a curiosity thing, because for one, I do know that they're relatively decent cases, so I shouldn't really have too much of an issue with it, as long as I'm not pushing crazy power through it or being an idiot. So I know it's not a horrible case, and beyond that, like I said, it was more curiosity. I know of a handful of people that have done this, so I figured I'd try it. And the people that I do know have done it haven't bothered to figure out the speedometer. So it was more of it was kind of a challenge for me. So the other thing, because that's cost and availability, the other big thing, which I'll show you in a little bit, is how far below the frame rails and transmission crossmember it hangs. Now, the MP231, which I have sitting over on the bench, that has the driver's side output sits up higher in the frame rail. Now, obviously, the case itself is bigger on the 241, so that has a lot to do with it too, but the angle that it's clocked on the back of the transmission is down farther than it was on the factory transfer case. Now, with that being said, if you really thought it was an issue, you could probably get a clocking ring and clock it up, and then you'd be golden. Obviously, your drive shaft length would have to change, but you're going through all that anyway because you're putting a different case in it. And then the other one is strength. Now, again, because it's a chain drive case, so it can only be so strong. I don't know as far as like actual test and strength numbers, but I'd put money on it. It's not as strong as an Atlas. Hell, it's probably not even as strong as an old MP205 or an old Rockwell, or hell, even maybe a Dana 300. I don't know. It's not a gear-driven case, so take that with a grain of salt. You can put a new chain in it. I don't know as far as if you can get a wider chain maybe and a bigger planetary. That is all new to me. I do not know, but it's definitely an upgrade from the MP231. Just from internals alone, the chain is bigger, the planetaries are bigger. It's just an overall stronger gear or chain drive case. Now, if you look from the side, you can see that the case hangs below the frame rails and even below the transmission crossmember, maybe a good 2 to 3 inches. This is first gear, low range with 456s on 35s. It's not perfect, but it's just good enough. That's just a very brief overview of my MV241OR install into a 2000 Jeep Cherokee. If anybody's got any questions, just message me. Like I said, it was actually pretty straightforward. I was surprised. I was expecting to have a good deal of issues. So, didn't have to modify the floor at all. All you really have to worry about is your shifter and then just trimming some stuff as far as the mount to get it to fit in there, and then your drive shafts and the shifter. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll check you next time.